Hey folks, thanks for tuning in again to yet another video in the series where I talk about how to create custom Nodegraph tools called gizmos. If you're interested in some other episodes in the series, I've got some links in the description below. In the last video, I went over how to create a warp node, and I'd like to follow that up this time by talking about how we can modify it to make a directional warp. The warp node we made last time will just warp your texture kind of randomly, and by making just a few quick changes, we can use it to push the texture in a certain direction. Like last time, I'm going to be doing this without extension pack so that it's friendly for non-commercial users, and unfortunately that means we're a little bit limited with some of the nodes we have access to, so we're going to have to do this in a slightly hacky way, but it still works perfectly well. Since we'll be building on top of it, let's start by reviewing what we made last video. Our tileable texture here is being warped by our warp node, which is driven by a noise or a texture of some sort. The warp node itself has some parameters to control the overall amount of the effect as well as a strength multiplier. Inside the node, we can see the warp noise comes in here. It's plugged into this multiplier where input A is multiplied by this exposed parameter B. We add this to some standard UV information, which gets blended in this mix node. The more input B is mixed in, the greater the overall amount of the warp. So that's great for a wacky, wonky, weird, warpy effect. How can we get this to work in a specific direction? Here we have an image of UVs. U, which is in red, represents left and right, and V in green is up and down. When we added our noise to our UVs last time, we added it to both channels at once, so it warped in both directions. However, if we can isolate the amount of noise that gets added to each channel, then we can control the direction. Let's dive into the Nodegraph and see how we can do just that. The first step to add direction to the warp is first we need to separate the U and V channels. So what we can do is take our UV and pipe it into a vector split. Hit tab, type in the name of the node, and boom. So what this will do is separate the image into individual channels of red, green, blue, and alpha. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put them back together over here with a vector combine and do what we want to do to create the warpy effect in the middle here. We're only really concerned with the red and green channels. We don't care too much about the blue and alpha, so I'm just going to move these out of the way by adding some dot nodes and getting these extra channels out of the way just to make some space. I'm going to delete this add node down here and plug in the vector combine into this mix node because this area up here is where the warp effect is going to get created, and this is what we're going to be blending to control the amount of the warp effect. Next, we're going to add an add node to each of the red and green channel streams, and we're going to connect up a multiply so we can control the amount of the effect in that direction. To the multiply, we're going to connect our warp noise and its strength multiplier. Basically, what we're doing is creating our warp effect and isolating it a certain amount to each red and green channel. With this setup, we can control how much we want to affect the warp left and right versus up and down. This multiply in the red channel will control the horizontal effect, and the green channel will control the vertical effect. Let's quickly go over the setup that we have here. My noise comes in here, and we use this multiply node as the strength of the warp noise. These multiply nodes here and here control how much that warp affects a given direction. At 0, there is no effect. 1 is 100%, and we can go beyond 1 for more intensity, or below 0 to go in the opposite direction. Lastly, the whole thing comes together in this mix node, same as last time, to control the overall amount of the effect. I'm going to very quickly label all this stuff because things are getting just a tiny bit messy. And we're pretty much done. Let's just expose and fix up a few parameters before exporting. I'm going to rename these multiply nodes to direction and expose this value here and here. I'm going to leave the attribute in the red channel at 1 and the one in the green channel at 0, so that by default, we'll get full strength in the left and right direction and nothing up and down. And because we already started from the warp node that we made in the last lesson, the rest is already set up for us. So let's play around and see how it works. I'll jump out here and start just messing around with the sliders. I can control the amount and I can control the direction this way and that way, and it looks good. except one thing looks a tiny bit weird. Let's jump over to the UV camera view again, and through just a little bit of investigation, we can see it's moving backwards. So what I wanted to do when I increase the value to the right, I want the texture to move to the right, but instead it goes to the left. And the same problem is for up and down as well. So to really quickly fix that, we can just simply swap the add nodes for subtract nodes, and it will do the opposite. And there we go, that's way better. So now all we have to do is export this to my Documents Mari Gizmos folder, and on the next launch, it will show up here in the Nodes menu. Now, earlier I mentioned that this is a little bit of a hacky way of doing it. It works totally fine, but there's actually a much more elegant solution if we have access to the sine function. Sine, as we all, I'm sure, know, love, and remember from trigonometry in high school, takes a given angle and translates it into a range between 1 and -1. Extension Pack comes with GL sine. So, through some magic math, we can plug in a value and it'll give us a direction. This operation here gives us up and down, and if we offset our given value and plug it into a second function, it will give us left and right. Now, with only one slider, the direction starts fully to the right, then turns up, moves left, down, and then back to the right. Which is great, but you need Extension Pack to use GL Sine. And Extension Pack already comes with a directional warp, so this is kind of redundant. But it was fun, maybe? Anyways, our simplified solution with the dual slider works just as well. Anyways, that's all for now. Hopefully you enjoyed that and learned a lot from it. Please leave any questions you have in the comment section below. Please leave a like, and thanks again for watching. I'll catch you next time.